Hi everyone, welcome to the Pasigo Design Watercolor Studio channel on YouTube, and today I'm going to be talking about texture. In a previous video I did this little painting of a tree using some of the textures that you see here. For example, using the alcohol, and the alcohol was basically added to these little areas, and you see what happened. It blew up and caused the watercolor to spread out and leave a spot in the middle that was lighter. So it's kind of interesting, very interesting effects. If you want to see that, just check out my previous video. Also use the Fiskars. This is a scoring tool, and it's just kind of cool to add texture on, for example, this tree. All the lines that you see were done with this tool. Watercolor pencils to outline, to do some darker contour lines while the paper is wet, works really well. And a little bit of granulating paint, which I use to just color the trunk a little bit with the violet. This is a schminky paint, granulating, really nice. And it's Tundra Violet. So actually I'm going to keep that one here. I'm going to use it again. I'll get rid of the alcohol and the previous tools that we used, and I'm going to start another painting. Basically the same idea, same thing, another tree form. Trees are so fun because they have a lot of texture, and you can't go wrong. You can just create as you please. You don't have to look at images. Just think about tree trunks, add branches, bunch of leafy stuff, and there you go. So let's do one more. And this time what I'm going to use are these tools. I have here a bunch of things, and I'll just line them up over here, and as I get ready to use them I'll be showing you. But basically it's just a Saran Wrap plastic piece that I pulled off my regular home Saran Wrap stuff, simple home household stuff that you have probably in your cupboard. I cut a piece of a credit card to give me some really good sharp square and uneven edges. We'll see what we can do with that. By the way, I think in the previous video I said I would use the credit card on this one, but I didn't get to it. I had enough stuff in here, so we'll try to apply it on this one. A little sponge that's useful for doing little erratic, sort of uneven textures. I've got a square brush to get me going, maybe for some of the branches. I have this really nice cool straw, and it came this way. I didn't do that. I bought it curved like that. It came in a pack. But anyway, I guess you can use it to drink a milkshake, or you can just use it to blow some paint across on your paper. That's what I have it for. So here we go. Let's just start. And again, like I said, typically I put my glasses on for this because I'm going to go the other side this time, and I'm going to make some crazy shapes here. Trees are bigger at the bottom, so if you're making a tree, think about how you're separating the shapes. You've got bigger, gets a little smaller, branches coming off the side, irregular somewhat, depending on the tree, but the trees that we make are just for fun. So irregular shapes for the edges of your tree. I don't just make a straight line. I try to start adding that texture right away just with my pencil. And then of course maybe this one is a branch that comes right into the tree. This one is behind the tree. Let's make this one coming into the tree. So we just have a line that comes in a little bit here. That little line can be erased. Let me see here. I have my gum eraser that I can use to erase just by lifting a little bit of that color. This is the best tool to use when you want to draw first and make a slight adjustment. And we typically just pat it down as opposed to scrub. All right, so I'm ready to get started. One thing I already don't like is how this is going out, straight out. I'll just make that kind of curl back up here. We're going to have lots of foliage here anyways, so. And the idea is really just to get a shape started and to have some sort of interesting things going on. The interesting stuff inside the trunk, I'll be using this for doing that texture. So let's go. I've got some paints here, Pearl Red, Azo Yellow, and Prussian Blue. One is by Winsor Newton. These two are Daniel Smith. What I start off with typically is a little bit of orange. When we're doing trees, we want some orange. I'm going to put a lot of paint in here, a lot of pigment. And yeah, my yellow is going to get saturated with different colors here. That's okay. I have my yellow ready to go if I need it. So orange is really a nice color, but that's really way too bright. So if I want to tone down that brightness, I'm just going to add a little bit of blue, and now I'll see what I get. I usually try to keep a piece of paper on the side. Let's just see, this one's almost full, but you can see here that this is a yellowish, very yellowish orange. If I want a little bit more browny, but that's okay. Actually, that would be a good start because we don't want the base to be too dark to begin with, right? So I like to start with a big brush. And I have a calligraphy brush here, which is by Connoisseur. There's a bunch that are available right now online. They're beautiful. You can get different types of calligraphy brushes pretty much from anywhere. And I'm going to put a little bit of water on here just to start. Okay, and leaving, as I do this, you see there's a little bit of color in my brush, and it allows me to see where I've left some white. And that's always good. Let's leave a little bit of white. Now, the next layer, and now wasn't a lot of water on my brush, and you can see it is shining, but it's not sopping wet. I don't want it to be super, super wet. I want to start with using this. This is an interesting texture because the Saran Wrap, once it's applied, it will seep into the paint and it will start to create a texture, but we have to leave it for a while. And so when I do this, I'm going to walk away from it for at least half an hour, and then I'll be coming back. But let's just see what that would look like once I start. So I'm going to put, start with some of that orangey stuff, orangey. And I'm just applying this on the wet area. So this basically is wet on wet. And I don't need to put it everywhere. Again, like I said, I can leave some little gaps of white. Because remember, the white can also be covered later. And I'm adding a little bit of blue as I go down, just to vary the color and give it a little bit more depth, a little bit more darkness. Here, there was no water. So I can take my brush, another little brush here that I have, and just move that around a little bit. It's got some color on it, that's fine. See, I'm already actually starting to add a little bit of texture here by putting this on an area that hasn't been wet. If it's not wet, then the paint doesn't move. If I want to make it move, at this stage, I take pure water and I just push it up. Okay. Now, what my goal is right now is to get enough pigment on here so that I can use my Saran Wrap. Let's get a little bit more going here. Okay. Now we see we already have some beautiful texture here. Okay. I'll make sure that there's enough. And now we are, actually, I'm going to put a little bit more depth, a little bit more darkness in a couple of spots so that the Saran can play with that. Okay. Now, when I apply this, it needs to be kind of overlapped. You can't just lay it flat. The texture will come from you squeezing the paper onto the shape so that you're actually affecting the image underneath, the painted image. So here I can see some of the shapes I'm going to be forming already, because when I push it down, I can see a sort of zigzag pattern happening. Now, this is great, but this is just not enough weight to make this happen. So any kind of a heavy book that you might have, let me see here. I have something like this that might be very helpful as long as it's heavy enough. If that doesn't work, then I'll put another book on here. Okay. And I make sure that the weight is placed on the Saran, making sure the Saran is all covered. And this is not a problem here because I don't have a very big pad of paper here. So we're going to let this sit for at least half an hour, 45 minutes. So I'm going away and I'll come back when it's ready. Okay, I'm back and we're going to lift the books off and we will look at what it has done. This was about half an hour, or actually 20 minutes, yeah. So looking at this, I can see that I have a lot of little striations, little lines going in here, kind of all over the place, which is rather cool. Some of these little dots are probably just from the paper. I'm getting different textures from the paper as well because this is a Belhang. And it's also fine grain. So it's really just, I thought maybe, no, so it's not really super textured. This is like the regular texture, but it's giving me some really beautiful effects. So it's not a rough texture, just cold press. And now this I could use again. There is no paint really residue left onto it, so I can just put that away. And here I see that although the texture of the plastic is left into the tree shape, it's still wet. So I can't really do the textures with my other tools inside the tree just yet. I'll have to wait for it to dry. Or I can use my hair blower at this point. I couldn't use my hair blower before because it was all covered up. But now I'm going to pause and I'm just going to go dry this off faster. Okay, this feels dry. Now what I'm going to do is, I still have some tools that I want to use. And I have a little bit of space here for foliage around the tree and maybe on the inside of the tree. And I'd like to leave some white so that I can use my straw to blow some lines out just for fun. And I do want to use my square brush to paint on the inside of the tree, but that'll be afterwards. Sponge, scrape. Where can we scrape on here? Maybe I'll make a line here and then we'll scrape an effect that looks like maybe there's a separation in the land. So let's try that. Let's see if any of that even works. All right, so I'm taking a brush, one of my brushes, like you see them here. I do like the calligraphy brushes. This one is a Yasutomo, this one is a Happy Dot by Connoisseur, and this is also a Connoisseur. So any calligraphy brushes that you have sometimes can be useful in this kind of little scenery because it has a really nice point, and we can do leaf shapes, we can do blobs, we can do all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to start with some big shapes, and I'm going to mix a green using my Winsor Newton Phthalo Blue. Pick some of that yellow. I'll make another little puddle on the side that's a little bit brighter. Making sure that when you mix this on the palette, you don't have clumps of paint on your brush. That's never a good thing. Okay, so I'm also going to use my brush to add a little bit of water, not a whole lot, but let's just start maybe on this side here. Just put a little bit of water here. And I'm putting some yellow green. Let's say I want to use my sponge and add to that. I will wet the sponge, not so that it's sopping wet, but just damp, okay, just damp. And then I'll pick a side that seems to have a lot of texture, and then I'll grab some color pigment so that I can see that it's showing on here. And I'll start making some little clumpy things. And I can still add more of my yellows as I move along. I'm just going to paint around this tree branch here. And I can still take my brush and add contrast. More blue if I want to. Deepen that area. Okay, and now let's pick it up over here and do a little bit more of that. Now I'm really getting the effect of something more in the distance. If I want to cross this over to the top of the branch, then I'll need to get some much darker pigment. Let's go to the edge of this here. Okay, and I'll just contour over here, showing the shape of the tree. As I said, how trees don't necessarily have very straight lines. Maybe some do. I like to make them a little wiggly. And so I'll use my brush to show that off even more. Okay. And I can use my calligraphy brush to make just little shapes coming out of the tree, kind of like going down. Let's do a couple more. There we go. If we go into the corners with too much texture, too much detail, that doesn't really look good either. So let's just brush that off a little bit and let that fade. I think that looks better for something that's coming down like that. So now I'd like to, actually I'll just continue here on the other side. A little bit of water. And the reason why I'm thinking right now is because at some point I want to cross over, take some of this paint and make it look like it's coming over top of the tree. And I'm not sure where I want to do that just yet, because it might ruin the effects that I want to create on the inside of the tree, like all these. I want to add a lot more to that. So for now, we're keeping it simple here. And I think I'm going to stop right about here. And we'll just add a little bit more of this. And there we go. Now, what I mentioned earlier is that we could also use our square brush. I'll use it on the inside. And we want to blow some color. So where could we blow some color? I'm going to blow it here at the top. Let's grab, I'm running out of paint here, so let's grab some of the blue that's over here. It's the same one. And I'll add a little bit of darker pigment here. And I want to blow this. I'm going to go this way. Okay. Let's just see if I can get a little bit more. There has to be a puddle of water in here. A puddle of paint or colored water, I could say. And then it does that. Okay. And let's do one more. Okay, I'm going to turn this around and go down. And there we go. So now we've used this. I could probably add some more later when this dries, but I'm not going to do that right away. And we did say something about the credit card, so let's get some of this stuff in here. I'm just going to make a few little scratches here with my credit card. We often like to use the credit card on rocks. I don't have any rocks in here, so maybe I could just show you later how to use it more effectively on a rock shape. And it's just making, you have to get it right at the right time. You have to pull the color down, and then it makes a texture of lighter with darker around it. Okay, so I guess we could work on the inside of the tree. I'll use my square brush. I'll take a little bit of orangey stuff and mix it with some blues, a little bit of my blues here. What is even going to be more interesting? I'm going to mix some of this as well too. This is the Tundra Violet, and I'm just wetting it up over here. And you'll see that the color is really, let's paint this on yellow. It's pretty brown. So actually I'm going to start with that one. And I'm going to start making some little, I'm painting now some of the shapes that I see in here from the plastic. And you can see that I'm just basically highlighting some of those shapes, making them come out a bit more. And I'm not painting all of them, just a few little areas to show irregularity in the tree. And also I'm going to confine it to the darker side of the tree. So the square brush just allows me to make like triangular shapes. When you have a round brush, it's difficult to do a triangle. Okay. And I'm just going to leave it at that for now. Now this paint is beautiful when we actually add a little bit of water and let it move where it goes. It'll go wherever it wants to go. So you can see that over here. Just connecting these two shapes. This is still a bit damp. Probably shouldn't be in this space right now because it's too damp, but I just want to show you this before I click on the off button. So there we go. Let's try the blowing on this. There we go. Now we have a different effect again altogether. And up here, just making sure that comes out of the board. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. It's all very wet. I have to let that dry. And there's sort of like, like areas of nonsense going on. So we're going to have to take a really good look, critical look at it afterwards and see how we can make it pop a little bit more. Okay, thanks for watching for now, and I'll come back later. Okay, I'm back, and we're going to finish this painting off. A couple of things that I want to do. First of all, I see a little bit of overlap here with the green. Oh, by the way, this is very dry now, so I can easily paint on top of what I have here. I'm going to use my square brush, making sure that there isn't too much of anything else on there. And I'm just going to remove that little spot here because I feel like that green shape is really behind the tree. So there we go. That looks better. That tree branch is definitely in front of the shape in the background. So now what we have is that branch coming into the tree. And I'm going to lift a little bit over here to show that it's actually kind of like a round edge. And all I'm doing is putting clear water, not sopping, just fairly dry brush of clear water, and I can pick up color and just make adjustments like that. The other place that I'm seeing that I don't like too much is here, but I'm not going to leave. I'm going to not touch that one right away. So the next part that I'd like to do is take one of my brushes again, calligraphy brushes, and I'm going to wet the tree trunk just lightly, gently, all on the one side. And why I'm doing that is because I want to put some shadow. See how these these brushes drop a lot of little droplets, and that's okay. That's nice. I like that. Now, even as I'm doing this, picking up more pigment also in certain areas, you'll see that in some areas I can still see right through. This is the transparency of watercolor. Even though you're painting on top, you can still see the textures on the underside. I'm not rubbing here. I'm just sort of tapping very gently. Because what I'm doing basically is just moving my brush to add little bits of pigment. Okay, and then over here we have a little branch. I'm just going to start the top of it here also. I'll put a little bit of shadow under that branch, a little bit of shadow here, and maybe just a little bit more on the edge over here, just to give it a little bit more dimension. Now when I add more pigment like this, you see it's darker. It's just because I have less water in my brush and I'm taking more color thickness, okay? And in here, okay. And a few little irregularities here and there. Trees are not perfect. There we go. So the next thing that I'd like to do, I think, would be to add a little bit of the yellows up here. I like that little bit of yellow here. My yellow's pretty dirty, but that's okay. And all I'm going to do again is wet this area and add a little bit of yellowish color up here. Just makes it look like it goes up and comes down like this. Gives a little bit of shape also to that tree, contouring or around that tree. And I can bring it down maybe a little bit more like this so that it's more like at an angle, like that. I might even add a little bit more of, just to add a little bit of shadow, maybe a little bit of shadows up here. No, I think that's probably going to be too dark, so I'll just tone that down a little bit. There we go. That's fine. Let's see, one more thing. Let's get some brown. So I'm taking the Tundra Violet and I'm adding a little bit of yellow to it. Oh, this is a beautiful green. It's very thick. And all I want to do here is add a little bit of extra contrast areas. And what we could also do is make a little hole in the tree. Wet, my brush is wet. I'm just moving the color and maybe another little hole over here. I'm just going around certain little areas that I already had left white. And this is just showing just a little bit of interest in the tree, right? You don't have to do that, but it's just part of the textures that a tree will have. This is all wet, so I'm just tapping. I'm not adding, I'm not brushing, I'm just tapping. And that works quite nicely with wet on wet. We're just tap, tap. Don't rub. Okay. And this is going to be the end of that little painting for now. If I see once it's dry that there's anything else to add, you might see it on the picture, the cover of this video, but pretty much that'll be the end of that. And thanks for watching. I'll see you the next time.